But I, in the middle of it, with the intermission, I thought, I have a million things to do, sit up here on the stage, and I was like, oh, thank goodness we did it. It was so good.
Okay, we're ready to go.
Nice.
Good morning, everyone. This is the Grand Traverse County Ways and Means Committee. This committee makes recommendations to the full board, which will be on March 31st at 7 p.m. here at the Governmental Center. So you will call the meeting to order. The first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. We can stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Bonnie, if we can do the roll call attendance, please.
Hooper?
Here.
Friend?
Here.
Stepka?
Here.
Richardson?
Here.
Thomas?
Here.
Max Bauer? Here. Lees?
Present.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Inman?
Here. Okay, everyone's attended. Next item is the first opportunity for public comment. Does any member of the public wish to speak at this time? John, get yourself introduced for the folks.
Good morning, John Syke, Grand Traverse County Planning Director. I have a couple good news items I wanted to report that aren't on your agenda. First of all, I wanted to report that on last Saturday in the morning, we had 55 planning commissioners, zoning board of appeals members, and elected officials learning about planning and zoning essentials. This was a workshop put on by the County Planning Commission, and we had great attendance, and we hope to make this annual program. And I just wanted to thank the commissioners for your support for planning education in Grand Traverse County. The other item I wanted to report was Jean Dorenzi indicated that she was very appreciative of Commissioners Inman, Thomas, and Fleece, as well as Administrator Aloya, for helping with the recovery zone bond program and contacting some of our neighboring counties and trying to have their allocations for that program that they're not going to be using redirected to Grand Traverse County. And I think this is going to help improve our ability to meet the needs of businesses interested in investing in Grand Traverse County, which is a good thing considering the economy at this time. So I just want to let you know those two good news items.
Dick?
Any counties giving away their money yet?
Not yet.
Well, apparently it looks like Benzie and Leelanau are seriously considering it. Charlevoix will be considering it today, and that adds up to close to $6 million that can be redirected here. And that's a program that basically you have to use it, and you have to use it within the calendar year here to get the bonds issued. So timing constraint is often why a lot of the counties aren't able to utilize those funds, and if we can utilize them here, then that's all better for the county, but also for the region, since this is a regional hub here. So,
Okay, thanks, John.
thank you.
Hey, Larry.
Yes, Beth?
John did a really nice job putting that program on Saturday.
Oh, okay.
It was packed. And I think, John, didn't you have, John? Didn't you had people there from almost every township, didn't you?
Yeah, we had 10 of the 13 townships were represented. The city and both villages were all there. So we had great representation, and who would have thought on a Saturday morning you could get 55 people learning about planning and
huge.
zoning, but there's interest.
Yeah, and I heard some good feedback from some of the people who attended, so
Great.
they liked it.
Cool.
And the board will remember several years ago when John was hired, we made a change in kind of our philosophical stand on that we were going to be there to support the local units in terms of education and trying to bring them together and collaborate on programs like that. And this is one of those efforts to try to do that. So that's a good turnout, John.
All right. Any other public comment? Fred, could you just get yourself introduced?
Fred Kiesler, Health Officer, Grand Traverse Health Department. Just a reminder is that we had invited everyone to the tour of the Health Services Building after this meeting. There was a discussion about perhaps adding on to that facility. Some of you may have not ever been there. If you haven't been there recently, it's the layout of the building and some of the challenges we have there. So you're welcome to come immediately after this meeting.
And Fred, where do you want them, just to show up at the front?
Yeah, by the front, that's always confusing, just come to the public entrance, which is on the west side of the building, if you follow what I mean. It'd be the upper level, you come in there. We'll keep an eye on the lower level too, just in case somebody comes that way.
We'll give you a call when we're finished, Fred, so you can
All
start
right.
watching.
Thank you.
Herb?
Herb Lemkool. Today I'm talking about 211, just to give you a brief update. The United Way has signed the contract with Muskegon to implement 211 for Grand Traverse County. There are going to be 9 counties that are going to be part of it. Emmett and Charlevoix have already started their process. Martha Lancaster has been put on the board for Michigan 211, so we have a Northern Michigan representative. The contract has been signed with Third Level from Muskegon to populate the database. The database then will be brought up to speed, and then we'll go for the Public Service Commission to have that implemented. And then we will start our marketing campaign. And the marketing campaign then will start to tell people what is 211 and how do we access it. There's a lot of people, I'm sure, that don't know that 211 is even available. But it is available in all the counties. It will be available in all counties in in northern Michigan, especially this northwest part of it, hopefully by February of 11. So we're got it started. It's up and running, and we're looking forward to it. And the money that you appropriate today in your consent calendar will be matched by Consumers Energy Grant that will also put money into this. And so we'll also be starting our campaign to raise additional funds. So just to give you an update on that. Is there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis, do we have something on our consent calendar on 211?
Don't see it.
It's under the budget adjustments, I believe, correct, Dean?
It's the first adjustment.
I missed that.
listed.
Okay.
Pull her out.
Any other public comment? Okay, there will be another time at the, closer to the backside of the meeting. Moving on to the approval of the agenda. Is there any items that commissioners would like to add to the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Support. I have one item I'd like to add, if you can amend it. Under new business, can I have just a brief discussion on the stairs on the side of the governmental center, the outside stairs? Perhaps that might be just a referral to resource management, but I'd like to get an update on that. So if we can add that to the agenda.
Sorry, you had your chance.
Okay, is that okay? All right. All in favor of approval of the agenda as amended? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, passes. Moving on to the consent calendar. Can we have the, Bonnie read the consent calendar?
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file or approval, is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. Number 1, Child Care Fund. B, approve. Number 1, Ways and Means Committee minutes of February 17, 2010. Number 2, Nurse Practitioner Position, Kingsley Clinic, Staffing Plan Update. Number 3, Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Agreement Multipurpose Grant. Number 4, Board of Commissioners 2010 Work Plan. Number 5, 2010 Remonumentation Grant Acceptance. Number 6, General Fund February 2010 Trial Balance and General Fund Revenue and Expenditure Summaries. Number 7, Budget Adjustments. Number 8, Appropriation Requests.
Okay, you've heard the consent calendar. Does any member of the public wish to have any item pulled off the consent calendar? Hearing none, does any of the board members wish to have an item pulled from the consent calendar? Commissioner Wheelock.
Item number 7, please.
Okay. Any other ones?
Mr. Chairman, did you want to pull the Board of Commissioners work plan to
Yeah, I
have a
was
discussion on that?
I was going to do that. Okay. Dennis? Any other items? Hearing none, can we have a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item number 4 and item number 7?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Friend.
Support.
Support Commissioner Stepka. Is there discussion? Hearing none, a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Friend,
Yes.
Stepka,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Max Bauer,
Yes.
Fleece,
Yes.
Wheelock,
Yes, ma'am.
Hooper,
Yes.
Inman.
Yes. Okay, we will move item number 4 and item number 7 under unfinished business. That would be number 8. So that's the work plan and budget adjustments. Okay. Moving on to department action items. First one is equalization. Go ahead, come on up, get yourself introduced.
Good morning, I'm Reiner Reichert, Grand Traverse County GIS. I wasn't expecting to do this, but it's we, at the county here, have an enhanced access policy which allows us to charge for digital data, which is enhanced or, has extra value to it from existing data. And one of the new files that we've created is an address point file, which we have, it's spatially accurate, it's been field checked, and we developed a cost criteria for selling this product, and that's what we're asking the board to accept the fee.
Okay, that's $3,477.70.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Pleasure of the board.
Move for approval.
Moved by Commissioner Thomas. Support by Commissioner Fleece. Discussion, Commissioner Wheelock.
I'm just curious, Reiner, who would purchase this for $3,500?
This is what we're proposing for anyone to sell out on the market. Anybody, like Google or Yahoo, there's a lot of commercial vendors that would be interested in this, that they could utilize with their spatial data. And we have not sold any. This is just that we're setting a price fee schedule here.
This data would provide more accurate GPS points. Would that be fair to say?
Yes. One of the things that our department did is that we went out and field checked all this data that for the accuracy. It also has a relate table to it where it can be related back to streets. There's other attributes that go with this data. Plus, it's spatially located. That it's the points are directly on the rooftop of every house. So it's an accurate database, and plus it'd be very powerful for anybody who works with spatial data.
So does it have the name of the residence or just a location?
No, it's only a spatial point with an address and a relationship back to a street, so you could find out, where it is on the street, specifically. Right now, we're using it primarily with 911, but there's nothing that relates back to a person.
Commissioner Richardson.
How did you arrive at the fee, proposed fee?
Well, what we did is we looked at cost, of manpower, plus, hardware, indirect costs, and then we just amortized. We came up with a rate that we've done with other layers, before, so many.
This doesn't have a profit built into it.
No.
Per se. It's the actual cost.
They're estimating 15 sales of the product.
Thank you, because that was my next question. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, any other discussion on the motion?
How often is this updated, Rainer?
Daily.
Daily? So if a new house is built,
The way it works, I do the addressing in the county, and so if I get a new development or new houses, we update it. It's put on our server, so people can see it already, but they can't utilize the data as far as in their own, if they have a GIS or some kind of a spatial data model on the outside, you can only use our viewer. So, right now the public can see it, the data, it's all available. But if a commercial vendor or somebody on the outside wants to utilize the data with their data, we're charging for it.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we have a motion and support to approve as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you, Reiner.
Thanks, Reiner.
Moving on to finance, Dean, welcome.
Good morning.
Morning.
The item on page 81 is a valuation that is required under current governmental accounting standards for OPEB. OPEB stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. In our case, that's primarily health care that we provide to a number of our bargaining units. This is a requirement of the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, specifically statement number 45. We did do a valuation as of December 31st, 2006. That was the first time that we were required to have this valuation done. Because of the number of individuals or retirees that we have in our groups, we don't have a formal trust by any means, but we are required to comply with the accounting standard for a number of reasons, primarily to have an unqualified audit report, and bond rating agencies look at this as well. But the main reason, I think, is more from an internal perspective, because we want to understand what this liability is, what the obligation is, and that can only be done by an actuary. I have provided a proposal from Gabriel Roeder Smith and Company. They are the actuaries that perform actuarial valuation services for MERS, our defined benefit plan. They did the valuation 2 years ago, and on page 84 it indicates what the price would be to do the valuation. There is a discount primarily because they do this work for a number of MERS member units, and the net cost to do this would be $12,800. That compares with $13,300 when we did it 2 years ago. And basically what happens here is they calculate or estimate what that future liability is. When we did this in 2006, we used two different interest rate assumptions. One was at a 4.5% rate, and the other was at an 8% rate, assuming that you placed the assets in a trust and you built or accumulated assets over time. Currently, it wouldn't make sense to use two interest rate assumptions because, number one, we don't have a trust established, and number two, we're basically on a pay-as-you-go plan, so we would be using a 4.5% interest rate assumption. But just to give you a sense for how large this liability is, when we looked at this in 2006, at 4.5%, the liability was just under $4 million. At a 8% interest rate assumption, it was $2 million. So there's quite a range. But things change over time. We have changed or closed this benefit for a number of our bargaining units, primarily the non-contract exempt and the non-contract hourly, to try to cap the growth of this obligation. And we do have to disclose and report not only the liability in the notes to the financial statements, but the funding progress that we make. We do have the information for 2008 and 2009, the year that is currently under audit. But going forward, we do have to have a valuation done so we know what the liability is and also what our required contributions would be. We do not have to make the required contribution, but we do have to disclose what those contributions would be should we fund them.
Commissioner Hooper.
Yeah, how different is this from the actuarial we're doing for the hybrid plan? And why is it we need exactly both?
The hybrid plan is a pension benefit. This is primarily and solely for the health benefits that we provide to retirees. So they're two different, they're different in that respect. The hybrid is a pension benefit, and this is for those health care benefits that we've committed or obligated to for some of our retiree groups.
Commissioner Wheelock and then Commissioner Richardson.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the actuarial for discussion, please.
Is there support? All right, moved by Commissioner Wheelock, support by Commissioner Hooper to approve the post-employment benefit actuarial at $12,800. Commissioner Richardson.
How many individuals are recovering right now in these 7 groups, retirees?
I think there's 264 as of the last time. Sally will have to provide that additional data, in terms of the number of contracts that come under this requirement and also the potential future retirees that would draw. I think it was 264.
264 is the number of retirees right now.
I do not know
Okay.
that. The other item I failed to mention was how we would pay for this. We did budget additional funds in our fringe benefits fund for the health program, and I looked at that yesterday. There are more than enough. There are sufficient budget dollars in that fund to cover the cost of this valuation.
Commissioner Wheelock.
Dean, I have to be curious, is there other firms that do this work that we should have bid this to other people? I know it's a professional service and we don't have to, and this is the recommended company from MERS. It always bothers me when MERS requires it and then they recommend that you use their auditor.
There could be, I'm sure there are, and we would have time to do that if you would want this to be bid out. I did not have a chance to ask Sally, and I don't want to assume. I had some comfort with this vendor in MERS's process because I was hoping that MERS actually bid this out, but I do not know that for a fact. But there would be other actuaries that could do this work.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion and support on the floor to approve as presented. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. All right, thank you, Dean. Is that it for finance?
Yes, at this point.
Okay, all right. Moving on to unfinished business.
Larry, I just have a quick question for Dean. Could you find that out before the board meeting next week if MERS does bid that out?
I would be very happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, good. Moving on to unfinished business, first item pulled on the consent calendar was the work plan, which is on page 39 for the county commission. That's there for your consideration. Any comments on the plan as presented?
Do you want to make any, John?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to have you an opportunity to kind of look at this a little bit further. I did compile all of your votes on the various items that we did in the strategic planning session back on the 25th of February. And really what you have in front of you, the top priority items are really the ones that had the top votes, either 5 or more votes, so it was a majority of the board. There was a couple that we kind of merged together based on some of the comments. For instance, when it talked about the county-paid health insurance, there was a couple ways those were worded, and I thought that they were kind of similar in intent, and so we included that in as a top priority. The second priority ones are just some of the remainder ones that they did only get 4 votes, but I put them there really more for your information. I think the top 4 objectives there and the top priority are really the ones that you need to focus on in terms of what you assessed as based on your votes. The first one there, determine an approach to assess the community's priorities of programs and evaluate effectiveness of programs, was the top vote getter. That got 7 of your votes, and that's really kind of talking about a different approach in terms of the budget process. The Siegel study item below that got 6 votes, and then the consideration of on-site expansion of the health services building got 5 votes. The one item that is, that we talked about, I don't know if you still want to pursue, and I guess that's the question this morning too, is we talked about the idea of having one commissioner kind of assigned to this to kind of oversee some of these objectives, so you kind of have a point person, and I don't know if you still want to do that or not, but that's for your consideration this morning too.
Okay, Dennis?
You know, as I looked at this, first of all, I think all 6 of these priorities are all priorities that are accomplishable this year in the action steps, and I think the action steps are the key things. And in looking at this, this is what I would consider, well, it's, you know, there's a good bit of work to be done here, but I think it's all achievable. And as I thought about it some more, I really think probably the better way to handle this might be to give a monthly report back to the board at Ways and Means or something like that, so all board members are aware of all aspects of where we're at on these. So that idea that we kind of had about, you know, assigning a commissioner, assigning a staff, I will probably assign staff, but I think if we make this a part of the agenda and give you a monthly report, here's where we're at on each item. Maybe when we do our administrator's update, it would be, then all commissioners are aware of where we're at, and then we can handle any issues that may come up during that time, if that's an acceptable way to handle it with the board members.
Commissioner Wheelock?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the 2010 work plan for discussion.
Okay. Moved by Commissioner Wheelock, support Commissioner Hooper. Discussion, Commissioner Wheelock.
Dennis, you know, I think one of the things in regard to the first objective to determine the effectiveness of our programs, I think, at least in my mind, one of the important pieces of that would be to actually get a list of the programs that we do operate. All of us have bits and pieces, but if we could ask staff to compile a list of programs that are operated by their departments, you know, we could actually look at that. I don't think any of us have a laundry list, if you will, of all of the programs that we list. You know, we all are familiar with certain departments, and therefore, you know, we know what kind of programs those departments make. But as far as what programs this county operates with county dollars overall in this community, I don't think we have that list.
Didn't we
Go ahead, Commissioner Maxbauer.
get something like that at budget time, Dennis? You provided that, I seem to recall, a list of programs when we were looking at budget.
You know, quite honestly, I can't remember the level of detail that was in Commissioners, but let me say this, the process that we've talked about, that as soon as the video comes, we're going to educate you some more on, actually goes through that whole process and actually looks at the inventory of programs, and it drills down to what the actual programs are. And this is going to sound funny to you, but in some cases what we might have in our mind as programs, not us, but the department even, may be a combination of 1 or 2 programs. And so I think I will go back and look, and if, as Commissioner Maxbauer said, if we've got that inventory, I'll provide it again. If we don't, I think it's a good first step. We're going to need it anyway. We're going to need that when we sit down and actually start putting together a plan to move forward with budgeting for outcomes or whatever we want to call it. And so we can have departments, if we don't have it, we'll have departments start working on that and get that to you, because that is, and see, my only hesitation, quite frankly, is I wouldn't want you jumping to any conclusions when you see an inventory like that until we get into a process that allows you to really kind of assess them. And so, but of course, we'll start on that. That's a good idea. And
as we assess those programs, and obviously it's not part of the first step, but we not only have to talk about what programs we do, but how many people it serves and how much it costs.
Exactly.
You know,
and all I'm saying is I don't want to jump to any conclusions before we start the process. But believe me, it's a good thing to have. And so I will get working on that with staff.
Okay. Commissioner Friend.
I don't know any of us that have jumped to conclusions.
Pardon?
I don't know any of us that have jumped to
I was
conclusions.
thinking more of me. I didn't want to be jumping.
First of all, I think you're right about not specifically assigned to the commissioner and reporting back. I think that's a very good suggestion, because it's the responsibility of all 9 of us.
And you're here every
These
week.
top
I get to see you every week, so
Right.
it's just easier to
Lucky
do
you.
this way.
And I do like the idea of the list of the inventory services, but one thing I'd like for all of us to think about a little bit is what we want to see, what detail, you mentioned the detail, to what level of detail is provided. If there are specific things we want to see in a list, the last thing I want to have happen is staff to go through a process of developing, a list of all the services, and then we look at it and go, well, you didn't say how many people it serves, because it wasn't included. If there's specific things that we want to see related, detail-wise, to those services, I think we should let you know.
And again, I'm hoping that when you get a chance to see the process that is used, that I'm going to use the process, let's say, that ICMA uses, okay? I think all of these things are addressed in that process, every one of them, and there's a kind of a method to it, and I think it's important that if you look at it and you go, this is where we want to take our budgeting process, this is where we want to take the priorities to the citizens, I think you'll see that the process makes perfect sense, and it comes in in an orderly fashion, in a way that allows you to make those decisions, but more importantly, allows the public to understand what the programs are about.
Okay, so when are we planning on viewing that?
The city ordered the DVD for us, and we're just waiting for it to be delivered.
Okay, because
Okay.
I'm thinking, like, I ordered a DVD off eBay.
Yeah.
Came from China,
Yeah.
and I got it in 5 days.
I understand.
So
I
I'm
understand.
thinking-
That's usually the case, and it's not the city's fault, but we asked the city to do it because they got a 25% discount. So.
For heavy metals.
I didn't know it came from China. Oh my God, I thought, what the heck?
I have a question, Dennis and John, on the top priority and the second priority.
Yes.
As you know, we have 3 major items that are scheduled for the township meeting, municipality meeting, that is kind of on the forefront of I thought, a sense of urgency in terms of this board's plan for the year, and that was to discuss and make a decision on the Board of Public Works structure, review and try to find a recommendation for the septic treatment plant finances, and we have the solid waste agreement, which is expiring at the end of this year, which may or may not get renewed, and there might be a different type of way of approaching that in terms of having the townships take over that responsibility versus the county, or we might split that responsibility. But I didn't see that, obviously, on the top priorities and the second priorities, and it did get, at least the septic treatment plant got 3 votes on the deal, but I'm just wondering if, I don't remember how everything laid out in the meeting, but it seems to me that these 3 items kind of wrapped into one big package in terms of resource recovery and how we handle solid waste. Seems to me that, just my personal opinion, is a high priority that this board is trying to address and trying to accomplish and by the end of the year. So I'm just wondering if we should look at the possibility of adding that to either the top or the second priority list.
The board can add anything they want to the list.
Yeah, I don't know how it all funneled out, in terms of
My guess is
marks
that,
or whatever.
My guess is that, I don't either, but my guess would be that that is something, you're not the only one that will influence the
Right.
decisions in that.
Right.
You've got 13 townships and, 3 municipalities that are going to vote on whether or not they participate in, the solid waste programs, for example. So my guess is that, maybe some commissioners looked at it and said, this is something we aren't going to do ourselves. But you can push a specific agenda of your own in those areas, and I think that that's fine to add. But again, I would caution that I think what's important there is to actually define what your actions as a board will be. So in other words, the action isn't necessarily, I wouldn't say the actions, for example, on solid waste are to, turn it over to the townships or take it over yourselves, but it might be your actions are to determine a county board's position on what you feel the role of the county is in terms of solid waste management and pursue that. Or it might be specifically to support the efforts of local communities to bid out waste collection. You know, so in other words, you want specific things that you've done, that you're going to do, and I would caution you not to say, solve the solid waste
Yeah.
issue.
Maybe it might be better worded to say that, you know, the board is going to try to facilitate a community-wide discussion
on
and direction
reorganization.
on the Board of Public Works structure, the septic treatment plant finances, and the solid waste agreement expiring this year. But, I mean, that might be a better way of phrasing it.
However you do it, but I don't know that I would agree that it would make sense to lump them together. They're all
Okay.
related, but they're all different. And so if you want to list them as three things, John, do you have a strong feeling about that one way or another?
I think that's kind of when you look at these, we broke them out, top priority and second priority. If you look at the second priority ones, it's the same kind of the thing with the dam removal process. I mean, I think obviously the board is a vested party in that, but there's other parties that are involved in those, in that process. Same thing with the Veterans Clinic and so forth. So maybe it would be appropriate to kind of include it in there. I was just kind of agree with Dennis in that really the top priorities are ones that are specific to the board. In other words, that you really have the control of those issues and you're really going to be focusing on it. So maybe we could include it in there.
All right, Commissioner Wheelock.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to maybe we could add it as a second priority, similar to the dam remover and lead clinic, because the majority of the control of this project truly is not ours. You know, the items that are in our priorities are things that this board is going to have jurisdiction over. Remember, the intergovernmental agreement is not between Grand Traverse County and the townships, it's between the Board of Public Works and the townships.
But let me suggest that if the rest of the board agrees that this would be one of the priorities, John and I could take a stab at putting together and adding it to next week's agenda. And maybe what you could do for us is, any of you that have any specific comments on it, if you could email them to John in the next, let's say, 2 days. And then we will make a stab at putting together an additional one that we would add to the second group of priorities, and have that for you next week when you adopt this. Does that make sense?
I think it's just a simple matter that we are going to help facilitate this. But we certainly don't have the control over it, so
Right.
that's why it
Right.
doesn't become a top priority.
So do we, on the motion that we have right now, do you want to amend your motion? Just to
That's
direct staff
fine. Well,
to-
we're going to have final vote on it next week anyway,
Right.
so if we have other alternatives, we'll just have an amended version when we vote on it to approve the final plan
So is
next
everyone
week.
comfortable with the amended motion? That staff will come back and just give us a recommendation on that
And
item?
anyone that has additional information in that regard should get it to John or Dennis.
Right. Commissioner Friend.
Larry, the items you're talking about are under 3 votes. They're just basically one level under what was included on the top page. The only other item there was to monitor and evaluate the baseball program, which I think we're all kind of interested to see how that goes this season. But rather than us add that to our work plan, I'm wondering if we could just send something to the Parks and Rec Commission and to Jason Jones that says, hey, this was identified as relatively high on our priority list, and we want to make sure that the Parks and Rec Commission and the Parks Department is evaluating that process at the end, you know, whether they survey participants or however they do, but they, you know, that they evaluate that and
I think that's a fine idea, and it's already been on mine, and it's already been put on Jason Jones. So, yep, I think in the Parks Board is the appropriate board to look at that.
okay.
So I believe the motion on the floor is to approve the work plan as presented with the amendment that the staff will come back at our full board meeting with the language regarding the second priority item on the Board of Public Works structure, the septic treatment plan, and the solid waste agreement.
Yep, and Mr. Chairman, I want to thank John for all his work in
Excellent.
helping to facilitate for your meeting and then put all this together for you.
Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. Next item is the budget adjustments, page 66. That was pulled by Commissioner Wheelock.
Well, I have historically said that 211 funding, when it was requested the first time, it was supposed to be a one-time donation, and they were going to find all operational monies without our contribution, so I will be opposing the second $20,000.
This would be the first.
This is the first.
Yeah, we
No,
held
we already
back on
made
the
the
first.
first.
No, we didn't.
This is the first appropriation of funds for
No.
211.
Because we approved it in 2009, but
We just didn't give it
We
to
didn't
them.
give it to them.
Okay.
Yeah, we put
All
the
right.
conditions on it.
Okay.
Okay.
They weren't ready for it.
Any other discussion on the item? Okay, we need a motion, please. Commissioner Richardson.
I would move that we accept budget adjustments as presented.
Moved by Richardson, Commissioner Richardson, support by Commissioner Friend. Discussion on the motion.
I just don't see where it's still...
Commissioner Hooper.
On what page? I don't even see it.
It's actually it's your first item, that there's a note under general fund,
It's on
211
page
funding, 20,000.
67,
It's not-
the note under the $45,000 increase, revenue increase expenditure.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. All right, moving on to new business. I added the,
Mr. Chairman, does that need
Yes.
a roll call vote because of the fact it's spending money,
okay, that'd be fine. Roll call vote on that, please.
I think?
Oh, no, it's not.
Commissioner Stepka?
He disappeared.
Get out from under there.
We'll start with Richardson,
Yes.
Thomas,
Yes.
Max Bauer,
Yes.
Fleece,
Yes.
Wheelock,
Yes.
Hooper,
Yes.
Friend,
Yes.
Inman?
Stepka,
Say yes.
For the appropriation.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. A grand, I wish I could do that kind of a grand. Yes. All right, now we'll move on to new business.
You can do it while you're leaving.
We can hit
I added the issue, and just, I guess, just kind of a, maybe if we can get an update from Dennis on this. The stairs on the side of the governmental center, as you know, has been taped off for many years. It just drives me crazy when I walk by that thing every day. You know, we really don't have, I believe we don't really have a decisive plan of how we're going to address the side of that building, and if we're going to repair the stairs or do a development on that corner of the building. But it seems to me that, you know, sooner or later, we're going to have to make a decision about how we want to handle those stairs, and whether we're going to tear them out, or we're going to replace them or fix them. You know, it just looks terrible with the yellow tape on the thing on the side.
Parked on this way, you won't notice.
So Dennis, I don't know, do we have an update on where we're at on this thing, or is it just
Sure.
kind of flat?
About 4 years ago, the staff, or 5 years ago, we made a recommendation to repair the stairs. The county board put that in the budget. We went out and did bids on it, and the county board rejected the bids and said it was too much and wanted us to go back out with another alternative. We suggested an alternative of replacing half the set of stairs, one side, and turning the other side into greenery to save on the cost. The board said to do that. We went out on bids on that. We came back with the bids on that. The board rejected those. It sat for a while, and we made a recommendation in the next year's budget to again do that. The board said no and said we should looking at it as part of the overall engineering of replacement of that whole wall, retaining wall, taking out the trees, which then subsequently we took out the trees and replaced that whole area, and that this should be looked at to be engineered as part of that. Request was put in last year in this year's budget. But of course, with the budget constraints that we had, it was removed from the budget. It was listed by Dean and I during the budget process at your request as one of the priorities to do the engineering of that whole redo. But of course, those were not added to the budget by the board. So right now, that's where it's at. The yellow tape stays there until the board tells us to do something different with it.
Commissioner Richardson.
I don't like the yellow tape either, by the way.
Yeah.
Do you remember what the estimates were on the engineering study?
On the engineering study?
Because I want to know, I
Yeah.
remember we toured it last fall.
We can look at, I can get that from Danny Brown. Looks like $30,000 for the study, and we had an estimated cost of $120,000 to do the river bank restoration. But I'm going to tell you quite honestly, just that number just sounds way low to me, to be honest.
Because we were talking about, you know, probably needing to put a wheelchair ramp across that.
Yeah, see, that's the problem.
To provide
There's-
access to the lower level.
It was
there.
developed at a time when that was not a priority, and so we just had that set of stairs that we have pulled out way over on the south end. But once we rebuild, we know we'll have to meet ADA standards on that. So about 30,000 to 40,000, I would guess, to do engineering.
Commissioner Wheelock, and then Commissioner Max Bauer.
Dennis, one of the questions I had when we talk about this, no, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of this federal grant money that is now being come.
Stimulus money?
Well, in the money that John thanked everybody, Leland and Benzie talking about.
Recovery zone.
The recovery zone money. Some of that money was specifically earmarked for governmental infrastructure. Do you
Yes.
think there's a possibility we could at least maybe get the stairs fixed with some of that money?
Well, Commissioner, I mean, all that is bond money that you have to guarantee.
Right, but it was a very low interest money.
Yeah, but it would be no different. We've analyzed it, and actually it would be almost identical to what we would get. Actually, ours, what we anticipate would be a little bit lower.
Okay. So it's not-
because of our bond rating, and really a $30,000 project, to do those stairs.
Well, I was thinking if you were doing
If you were going to do the whole project
doing
for
the wall.
$250,000 or something like that, even that, I don't know that it would be worth our while to go through that process, to spend $10,000 or $20,000 on bond, counsel and financial fees to do a project like that.
Commissioner Max Bauer.
I ask this every time the stairs come up.
Which is
Why can't we just plant it? Just take the stairs out and plant it.
I think we're required to have a second means of egress from the downstairs doors. And so I think we have to have a set of stairs. That's my recollection from my discussion with the building code department. I can go back and relook at that, but that was my understanding, is we had to have a way down those stairs or up those stairs if people needed to exit the building from a different location. So I can double check that for you, Commissioner, and get back, but that was my understanding.
Even if we were to
Commissioner
plant
Fleece.
one half.
Well, aren't you talking about the north half of the stairs, the ones that are no good?
Yeah. Well, actually, no, just taking them all out.
No, because originally we had talked about doing exactly what you said, take the north side out and just plant it.
Yeah, I thought that was actually a really good suggestion that
And
the
leave
board
the
made.
south side.
Yeah.
Was that found to be more expensive than just doing stairs?
Well, as I recall, it came back less expensive, but not considerably less expensive. It wasn't half, let's say. And the other thing, I hate to say this, but it's been 4 or 5 years since we
Right.
initially looked at that. The south stairs are starting to break up too, so, I mean, we're going to have to, if we do that, we're going to have to pull it out, we're going to have to pretty much chop it up and then redo the stairs. We've been patching them on a yearly basis, but.
What about the, you said it was 4 or 5 years since you priced it out, and a lot of people were very busy 4 or 5 years ago. I'm wondering if you'll get any better prices.
Well, this was a $30,000 project, as I remember, it was about $30,000 to $35,000 to take out the stairs and replace both sets. I want to say it was $20,000 or $22,000 to do half and to turn it into landscaped area. Okay? So the margin on a $20,000 project, I don't think is going to be, it might be a couple $1,000s, Commissioner, we might say, which is great. There might be a slight margin, but I don't think it'll be that significant.
Commissioner Thomas.
As I remember, to replace the whole width of the stairways, which is 27 feet, which we don't need, is 60-some thousand.
You may be right, Commissioner. I was thinking in the 30 range, but I could be wrong. I don't recall.
Would a suggestion be to refer this over to the Resource Management Committee and then have Dennis bring back all the data he has on this thing, and then we can either give him direction or not give him direction from that committee?
I think that's.
When our budget gets better, let's just buy more ribbon.
Well, the other thing in that regard, Larry, would be to have Danny come in and tell us about the maintenance, what the current condition is of the other half of the stairs. And I remember one of the discussions we had when we talked about planning half of it and stairs was the maintenance cost of maintaining those plantings.
Let me-
We just refer this to maybe
Let me
Resource
first
Management?
suggest that, because, you're going to have to put sprinkling in there and things like that. Let me first suggest that I have Danny come. That was quite a scowl, Commissioner Thomas. Let me first suggest that I have Danny come to Resource Management.
Okay.
And one thing we might be able to do, if you want to pursue this again, would be to do the design, but have the design of that whole renovation done in a two-phase design. Have them design it, but have it done so it could be constructed in two phases, and perhaps the first phase would take into account the rest of the construction, but would only be dealing with the stair issue. So then you could pull out the first piece and say, all right, we've got the whole design of that whole walkway, but we're only going to repair the stairs this year, and next year we'll look at something bigger than that. But I'll get you some information, and we can talk about it again.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the capital improvement fund would be probably the most ideal place if we're going to act on this thing in terms of the funding.
Right now, it's probably the only place.
Only other place, yeah. All right. Okay, everybody cool on that? We'll just refer that over to Resource Management Administration Committee. All right, moving on to second public comment. Any members of the public wish to speak? Hearing none, we'll close second public comment. Do we have any comments from county commissioners? Commissioner Maxbauer.
I just have one, and I should have probably brought this up under new business. I emailed Dennis and asked him if it's possible to appoint a county commissioner on the Tattle Board. I just think it would be helpful. And, I don't know whether we want to have this discussion, of course not now, but perhaps in the future, but I just wanted to toss it out there that I did email Dennis, and Dennis did say he was going to contact Mr. Cooney.
Bob is looking at it.
And so I just wanted to let you know.
Just a second thought on that. I had a brief discussion with Dennis about the report that came in under public comment regarding the status of relationship with the satellite library system with the Tattle Board. And in terms of what the city's role and the county's role is in that, who has authority, who doesn't have authority, and those kinds of things. And I asked Dennis if he could pull the bylaws out that really established the membership of the board, the Tattle Board, and the roles of the city, the role of the city and the city, and the role of the county. So I'm just wondering. Dennis, when you have a chance to look at that, if you could just brief us on, where we're at on that thing.
I will. Katie was working with staff to pull that information, and she had some information. We wanted to go back and make sure we had it all, and I haven't looked at it in the last few days, but as soon as I have it together, I'll get it to the commission.
Okay. Commissioner Thomas.
We definitely have a civil war coming up here between the Tattle and the Peninsula Library and the Green Lake Library. Those people are really mad.
Commissioner Fleece.
Mike Stepka and I both attended the last Tattle Board meeting last Thursday night at 5:30 p.m. and there was some behavior that I would have, by a board member, that I would have termed totally inappropriate, and I spoke to it at public comment at the end of the meeting. But I think we do need to take a close look at that board, and presently, the county appoints 4, the city appoints 3, and I would be interested in those bylaws, because if it's done on a population basis, if that was set up that way, the city's entitled to approximately 1.5 or 1.6 people on that board, and the county should be appointing the rest, but I think we need to monitor that situation closely.
Okay. Commissioner Hooper.
I'm wondering if it'd be to our benefit if we wrote a letter of concern to the board and expressing our concern about how they're treating these satellite libraries, and have maybe drafted by somebody.
Well, what they've done in effect, and what's really stirred the pot, is they budgeted for this year $441,000 for the 3 libraries, Peninsula, Interlochen, and Fife Lake, and which is roughly the same amount they did last year. But what they did is they took away roughly $30,000 from Peninsula and Interlochen and gave it to Fife Lake. They're not making any extra appropriations to the Fife Lake Library, and the Fife Lake Library this year, if my memory serves me correct, is going to receive about $123,000 The other two, $150,000, plus they're going to charge them some administrative fees, which come to like $30,000 each, which Peninsula Township, for example, their millage generates $550,000 for tattle. And for them only to give back
130.
Yeah, 150,000 really makes me wonder what's really going on. Blair, for example, and Blair doesn't have a library, we're going to give the tattle through the millage close to 300,000. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on there, but 2016, that millage is going to expire, and at the rate it's going right now, that millage is never going to get renewed, at least by 2 of the 3 townships.
Dennis, just a quick comment, and then I'll ask you to respond. Previously, we had asked, I believe their chairman and their executive director, since left, I think, to come to one of our committees and just give us a kind of an administrative update of what's going on, and they did so. I wonder if it would be appropriate to ask the chairman and the new executive administrator to come back and give us a administrative report, and then the commission can ask some questions. Would that be appropriate, or?
I think it's very appropriate. I think I will get you the history on this, and I think I think it's important that you kind of hear both sides of it. I don't know what the answer is. When I listened the other day, I'm actually quite surprised I didn't hear you, one of the city commissioners say this, but you kind of sounded a little bit, Commissioner Fleece, like a commissioner from the city who was saying, look, we're putting these tax dollars in from our city or from our township, and we're not getting anything out of it. Right. But my point is this, and this really worried me when I heard that, because I'm sure Peninsula does put in a lot more taxes than they get back. But I was wondering if one of the other libraries puts in less than they get back. Does Fife Lake put in $130,000, or do they only put in $50,000 and they get
Green Lake or
$130,000?
Interlochen puts in more than they receive back. Now, Fife Lake, I'm not sure on.
And my only point was this: there's always 2 sides to every story, and I think that Commissioner Inman's idea is a good idea, and they are your board members, and I think it's every bit appropriate for you to say, we want to hear from you, and we want to hear, because we're only hearing this, and have a discussion with them. And you might want to do that, rather than do it as a part of an existing meeting. You may want to schedule something like after an existing meeting where you can focus for an hour on it. I would suggest you consider doing that, just so you have a little bit more time. And I'm guessing that if you schedule a meeting like that, which I think is a really good idea, you're likely to see people from Peninsula and Interlochen come to that meeting as well, and that way you'd get kind of both sides of it a little bit.
Commissioner Max Bauer.
Well, that's one of the reasons I asked if we could take a look at putting a county commissioner on the tattle board, because I think that would give us a clearer overall view of, because I've only heard from one side. I haven't heard from the other.
Okay. So Dennis, if it's the pleasure of the board, then we'll go to Commissioner Fleece to have you set up, or just communicate a letter that we would like to have a meeting with their representatives.
Actually, Commissioner, as we were talking, I think maybe you're right. We should do it at a committee meeting first and let them come in and, kind of give a presentation. And then if there's a need to schedule something special for that, then you could schedule something after that.
All right, Commissioner Fleece. Commissioner Fleece.
Webster's dictionary definition of negotiations, if you're not familiar with it, you should look it up, and I think the tattle board absolutely should look it up. And from my take on it, and I attended the January meeting, I missed the February, I was there the other day with Mike. In effect, what they've done is we've got $441,000 budgeted, and we're done talking. Now, this is what we're going to do. They're willing to move funds around a little bit, but then Fife Lake is still getting shorted. I don't view that as negotiations whatsoever.
Okay. So it's a consensus that we would try to arrange to have them attend one of our committee meetings?
What?
Okay, Commissioner Friend.
Can we just combine that, like at a resource management
That's what-
administration, and then also have the background information, the bylaws or the statute that establishes the commission, and what our latitude is?
I think that's the meeting we would do it at, so
Okay.
as long as their calendars are available, yep, that's what we'll try to do.
Okay, good suggestion.
So next month, then.
All right, any other commissioner comments or reports?
Yeah, I'd just like
Commissioner
to
Friend.
let you know, the Community Collaborative, which is normally a week from Thursday at 8 a.m., they're actually having it on next Monday, the 22nd at 8 a.m. instead, because they're having Jason Allen and Wayne Schmidt there for questions. And I have other things scheduled, so I don't know that I'll be able to make it Monday morning, so if anyone can do that. I think that they're still having it, and if I find out different, I'll let you know, at the Michigan Works Building on Division there.
When did you say it was again?
Monday, the 22nd at 8 a.m.
Oh, at 8 a.m.
Yep, at 8 a.m. at the Michigan Works Building. The other thing is that we had, of course, the four of us know, but...
You said on Division, did you mean on Garfield?
Oh, I meant on Garfield, yep, sorry, thank you.
Maybe it moved.
We had the first meeting for the Siegel Subcommittee.
Yes.
And just wanted to let you know kind of how that went, and I think it went pretty well. Jen has done a really nice job of gathering the background information for us, taking the charge from the board and breaking that down into some distinctive sets, kind of, or goals, kind of a flow chart, if you will, answer this question, then we'll move on, past go, and we'll move on to the next step. So just done a nice job with that. We'll be meeting again March 26th. So from March 26th through April, we've decided to meet every second Friday. So March 26th, 8:30 to 10 a.m. here in the committee room, and then every 2 weeks after that through April, and then we'll look at our calendars and see where we're at there. So.
Okay, good report. Any other county commissioner reports?
I don't have a report, I just had a question. Is the implementation team meeting for the dams implementation?
Tomorrow at 1 o'clock in this room.
Okay, so it's just not on the calendar? Unless it's, is that NMCAA?
No,
Okay.
we neglected, we missed it.
Okay. Anything else? Commissioner Fleece.
Regarding the Weber 4-8 well, the injection well, Monday night, last Monday night at Mayfield Township's board meeting, they're really concerned out there, and so they have managed to talk to the DNRE, and they've gotten that meeting well, first of all, they got it moved from Mill Creek over to the Hannah Gymnasium there, so it's close to the residents. Number two, the meeting's not been reposted as to a date, and so the April 7th meeting is off, and they're going to reschedule that. But the citizens in Paradise, the Village, Mayfield, and Blair are really opposed to that injection of the leachate from the landfill, and I think Mayfield's going to do what Acme did. I talked with Wayne Clatter originally at MTA, and they're going to hire an engineering type person to make a presentation on behalf of the Mayfield board, and Paradise has indicated that they would financially help them along if they needed some help, but I think they're going to make a pretty good presentation as to the reason they don't want that well used for leaching.
In regards to that, I also had a discussion with John Syke, and I suggested to John, and we haven't talked since, but I suggested to John that since we had the issue in Acme and now we're having this issue in Mayfield, and in fact I think we've had some public come here and request, I've asked John if that wouldn't be an appropriate subject for our plan commission to take up, the idea of injection wells in Grand Traverse County.
We did.
Did you?
Yesterday, we had a planning commission meeting, and you can go back and watch the video so that you have, an accurate recount. But basically, we decided that, specifically with this well, this is if the planning commission were to comment or to recommend that the county board would make a comment, it would have to do with the land use impact, not the science and the engineering that happens below the ground. but the land use impact. This isn't, in this particular case, it's an existing well. So the land use impact probably would be changed minimally, maybe some more truck traffic or something. But, and then in general, commenting on these disposal wells, you know, they're not subject to zoning ordinances, along with other things. You know, we're not subject to zoning ordinances a lot when we do things with county buildings. Schools are not. And, you know, one of the suggestions was, well, just let us know when these wells come up or you get notified of them, put them in our packet, and if we, you know, think that we'd make a comment on them. But then at the same time, there are a lot of things that aren't subject, as I mentioned, schools, you know, the county, state building, state police, that aren't subject to the zoning ordinances. So which ones are we going to comment on and which ones aren't we? For example, again, schools, we don't comment on those. They impact land use planning probably more than anything else, and we don't comment on those. So what the result of the conversation was yesterday was John was going to put together a list of entities that don't have to adhere to zoning ordinances, and we were going to look at that and say, you know, which ones most impact land use and would we like to maybe potentially comment on.
See, I don't view that necessarily as a land use. The use of those injection wells with unknown results, you know, if you're putting brine and oil down, that's where it came from originally. When you start putting leachate down there with all kinds, the possibility of all kinds of chemicals and so forth being in the leachate.
Industrial waste, too.
And it's fine if they're going 2,200 feet deep, but, you know, what's going to happen in 50 years? Lyle McManus was there. He's been a longtime resident of Hannah, but he's also a longtime resident, and Lyle has a lot of children. And he raised his family the majority of the time down in Battle Creek area, and he lost 3 children to cancer because of a well, an injection well that ended up contaminated the water down there, and he is really opposed. And if you want to hear somebody that is fairly knowledgeable on injection wells, so we're looking at a safety issue that down the road, you know, if it contaminates, well, for example, less than 2 miles, Blair's developing a new well field for their municipal water system. Now, that well, I think, is only 500 and some feet deep. But, you know, how is this traversing? And that to the south, where the injection well is higher than where Blair is. So I think we ought to really be concerned.
Okay. Any other commissioner comments, reports? I have one item. As you recall, a number of months ago, a gentleman by the name of Tim Malone came in and kind of gave us an overview of his initiative for the broadband initiative for Grand Traverse County, and at that time, the board also had a presentation from Tino Breidup, representing the Traverse Bay Economic Development Corporation, and their multi-county initiative for the broadband initiative and the round 1 and round 2 funding and those applications. I got a call from, I believe the gentleman's first name's Gary, and he's from Boardman, I believe it's Communications or something like that, Boardman something or other. And the chamber, the Traverse Bay Economic Development Corporation, ended up endorsing his company to go out and capture all the data, at least in part, for the Elk Rapids, Acme, Whitewater, Union, Fife Lake area. I don't know if he's doing any more than that. They're kind of pairing this thing off. And initially, the board agreed to send a letter to Mr. Malone, basically sort of a generic letter of support for the initiative for the broadband, but the letter did not really endorse his company or indicate that we were going to spend any money on the situation. Well, I got a call from Gary yesterday asking if the board would give him and the chamber, Traverse Bay Economic Development Corporation, a similar letter of support for their initiative to apply for these funds. And so I indicated that I would brief the county administrator and the board members on it, and I'm not sure how we might want to proceed with that. One thought I had yesterday was we might want to have Tino Brightup come back in again, give us kind of an updated report on their initiative and where they're at and how things look, and then from there we can address the letter of support to the Traverse Bay Economic Development Corporation and whoever is doing their work for them. I thought that might be one way of looking at it. Any event, I did not have a chance to talk to Dennis yesterday. He was out of town, so I don't know if Dennis, if you've got. I thought maybe after the meeting we call Tino and see, maybe what he would suggest and what they're kind of asking for, or maybe come back and have him stop in. It looks like everything's on a kind of a fast track, so I don't want to wait another month. Maybe they can come in at our board meeting and then we can address it there. Or Commissioner Wheelock.
Well, I would think this item would be referred to the Grand Traverse EDC, and I know they are in partnership with Tino and the chamber, but I don't believe this board is in a position to make recommendation without having input from the EDC.
That's exactly what I thought.
That's what we have the board here for. So, my recommendation is get whatever information you would have to Gene so as it can be on the EDC's agenda and see if they can get a letter of support.
Okay, that's a good thought. Commissioner Richardson.
Yeah, and it didn't come up at the EDC last Thursday.
Okay.
Which it seemed like that would have been the place to be. I assume this has to do with the cutoff on the application for the second round of stimulus funding, which I believe is March 29th, which means that,
it's coming up pretty quick.
even addressing it at our, March 31st meeting would be too late.
Right.
So I'm not sure. I mean, I'm surprised that I haven't heard about it yet.
Right.
Until just now as you brought it up. So.
Yeah.
That's something we need to do.
No.
Dennis, what do you have a thought about how we might want to proceed with that?
Well, yeah, it's been somewhat of a confusing process.
It is.
Because I understand that they've hired vendors and then hired different vendors, the chamber. So rather than get into detail about this, I do believe that that's the right recommendation. It should go to the EDC, and the EDC should make the support of it. But my only suggestion beyond that would be that we ask the chamber to draft a letter that would be an appropriate support letter from whatever is the appropriate county entity, and then look at adopting that letter so that it's specific to their needs for their application. That would be my suggestion.
But I firmly believe that request needs to be made by the Grand Traverse EDC, not by a particular vendor.
That's what I was suggesting. The problem is, obviously, if EDC is not going to be meeting here soon.
Well, yeah, and if there is a time frame here, I don't think we're going to meet it. But the EDC basically recommended that the county fund the first round, which, then this commission decided to do that. And then the EDC said the TB EDC now, not the county EDC, but the Traverse Bay EDC, said they would assume responsibility for the second step, which they've done. And if they wanted our support for an application to the federal government, then they should start with the EDC and then come to us. And then if there isn't time to do that, then there isn't time. So I would say we just wait until it develops.
I will call Tino today, though, and just kind of see where this is at, and I'll give you an update.
All right. Is that good? Commissioner Fleece.
I did receive a comment from a trustee at a rural township regarding our meeting next Monday, and his question was, why is the meeting scheduled from noon to 3? It in fact, both trustees on that particular township board, that's in the middle of their workday, and they don't have the opportunity to take the time off work to come. And I told them I'd pass it along. I think when we schedule those meetings, perhaps they ought to be scheduled, like the trustee said, if you'd have made it from 5 to 8 or something like that, at least, it's not right in the middle of the workday, so.
That's a good point, Commissioner. I know that Katie's had a lot of difficulty in trying to find a time when a lot of people could make it. Now, our experience has been, while I certainly understand that our experience has been that we get a better turnout during the day than we do in the evening, because many of these townships have evenings meetings, just as you do. But we could certainly try that the next time and schedule one in the evening and see what kind of a response we get, like from 5 to 8, and see how it works out. Be glad to do that.
Hey, try the Great Wolf Lodge on a Saturday morning. We had a lot of people show up.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. All right, any other county commissioner reports? Hearing none, we will move on to notices. Any announcements or notices, Dennis? Commissioners?
Just, again, to reiterate that after this, after our closed session, there's going to be the tour of the health department, and hopefully several commissioners will be able to make that. I think it's important that you see it, and I know the staff over there is anxious to see county commissioners at the building.
Okay. And then, Dennis, we have a scheduled closed session. Are we going to move forward with that?
Yes, Commissioner, I would like to move forward with that, and it would be to discuss Teamsters' general labor negotiations. I want to add that I don't anticipate any action coming out of this, and this is going to be a meeting where we're going to actually try to spend a little bit of time doing some analysis with you and start planning for 2011. So this might take more than 10 or 15 minutes, depending on how many questions commissioners have. So I just want to again pose that question. Do you want the TV staff to stick around and come back in, and then we'll come back in and open it and close it again, or did you want to end it now? There will be no action as a result of this.
I think typically we have gone in and we have waiting and then come back and recess, or adjourned. Yep, probably the way to go. Do we have a motion to go into closed session? Commissioner Fleece.
I would move that we go into closed session to discuss labor negotiations with Teamsters General.
Support.
All right, moved by Commissioner Fleece, support by Commissioner Wheelock, to go into closed session to discuss labor negotiations with the Teamsters General. Is there discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Fleece?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Hooper?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Stepka?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes. Okay, do we have a meeting room?
Is it our desire to have the TV stay, or are we going to
Yes.
clear him?
Which one?
Yes.
Committee? Committee room.
All right, yeah, for the audience, we will return after our discussion and adjourn the meeting.
Not conference, committee, right?
Back.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we come out of closed session.
Support.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. Now we need a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned, and for those that want to go over to Health Department, call.